Hello, everybody, and welcome back to a third sub live show. Another one, Whitecaps edition. We're back, presented by Macy Sports. As always, bit of technical difficulties had us a bit delayed, but we're back to chat all things Vancouver Whitecaps ahead of a massive game with the LA Galaxy. But before we do that, I'm your co-host, Alexander Gangaruzik, joined as always by Sammy Rowan. Before we dive into this, Sam, how are we doing? I mean, obviously, we chatted a bit in the real world. Checked out the Whitecaps U23 game for those who missed it. Make sure to check out the next one. Great atmosphere, great players, lots on display. But yeah, how's it going?
That's what I was going to say. It was an absolute pleasure to take in some Whitecaps under 23 football. Swan Guard, beautiful ground, wonderfully maintained pitch. Actually, that's got to be one of the best grass pitches I've seen around town. It was a good match. Second half, kind of marred by a red card that happened. Things were a little tense. Not as many opportunities, but we got to see Isaac Bomer, Cam Habibullah get some minutes. That was certainly exciting. Mateo Campagna as well. Can't forget him. So great to see some of those guys in action. But obviously we've got the big boys. We've got the first team this afternoon to dive into, and shout out to an academy grad, a guy that would have been playing for a team like the under 23s maybe even a year ago, Pat Metcalf, getting a start. No Russell Tybert in midfield, which is interesting. We were thinking, hey, maybe Bruno Gaspar on the wing. It turns out it's going to be Brian White. I don't know if that might be a Mark Dos Santos, mirage. I could see Cava kind of dropping into wide areas. I don't know exactly how that's going to work. That's certainly interesting up front. Obviously, with Dahome out, Gutierrez out at the back, it's created some interesting problems for the Whitecaps. Baldy out with suspension as well. So, yeah, Alex, let's just dive into. I already mentioned a couple things about the lineup, but your thoughts of a couple of those idiosyncrasies.
Well, yeah, just before we dive in, it's a flat 4-3-3 again today. Start Max Crepeau in goal, first start back since the Gold Cup. Ranko Veselinovic, Eric Godoy stick together. They've been the center back pairing that has kept the best defensive results for the most part. At least Ranko Veselinovic has. Moving on, Jake Nowinski, Javane Brown, the fullbacks. It says Jake Nowinski's list is left back. Javane Brown actually did mostly team to train as the left back, so I wouldn't be surprised if some flip-flop in there. Either way, they've both played similar amounts of left back and right back, so not much of a surprise there with Christian Gutierrez suffering a quad injury in the week. That obviously has him day to day. Moving up in the midfield, Pat Metcalf fills in for Michael Baldissimo, who's obviously suspended. Kyle Alexandre, Janier Bakel, the two Whitecaps midfield stars.
I really like that midfield three. Actually, I'm very excited.
We've been calling for a Metcalf start since the first day of the season, so it's finally nice to see that happen. Then up front, it's front three: Diver Caicedo, Lucas Cavallini, and Brian White on the wing. Obviously, Ryan Raposo is a candidate to play there. Bruno Gaspar, Cameron Habibullah, who ended up playing for the U23s, all options on the wing, but they chose to go with Brian White. Going to be interesting to see how that looks, because if not, we might see some Bruno Gaspar, who, to be fair, might not be fully fit to start, and that could be a plan for them to bring him in with fresh legs. So lots of interesting faces here in that 4-3-3 for the Whitecaps.
Yeah, it's really, I mean, I spoke just about how I'm intrigued by the midfield, but I think that front three is going to be the most interesting one to track, right? Especially because I wrote in the match preview I did for 86 Forever, the huge difference between, so we've had two of these LA Galaxy matchups so far this year. I think this is the only team the Whitecaps will have played three times, correct? This would be, it feels like the most familiar foe. I don't know. Alex is muted there, so I can't really hear what he's saying.
Apologies. I turned my microphone off and I was yelling at myself. But no, they do play pretty much every team three times.
But I'm saying this is the first time at the third matchup.
It's funny because they haven't played Austin yet, and they're supposed to play Austin like two or three times.
So what I find very intriguing about this matchup is that one's third in the standings, one's last in the West. And yet I feel like they're very evenly matched, especially because of kind of the strengths and weaknesses. And a big part of that is LA Galaxy center backs are not good. They're not mobile. They can be exposed. When the Whitecaps played a 4-4-2 with White and Cava against the Galaxy the first time, it did not work at all. It did not put those center backs under stress. the second time out, we saw the 4-3-3 with Caicedo and Dahome, and they tore those center backs to shreds. I think of Derek Williams just getting left in acres of space. There was obviously the moment with Brian White where all three defenders dove at White and just left Dahome wide open in front of goal. So I don't know how. I'm fearful of White and Cavallini up top again. Two guys that have certain attributes, but pace, the ability to stretch the game, not necessarily their strong suit. So can they put those center backs under stress? Because that's the easiest part of LA Galaxy to exploit. And can Deiber Caicedo do it all on his own? Do they have something creative up their sleeve? I'm not sure.
Yeah, and I mean, the LA Galaxy aren't exactly posting phenomenal defensive numbers at this point. They're actually one of the
same defensive record as the Whitecaps, but they have 10 more goals scored.
Yes, that's it. Same goals against, worse goals, expected goals against. So they could be giving up even more if it wasn't for a certain Jonathan Bond in net, who has been saving them many a time this year. This LA Galaxy team isn't really. I'd say they're a great. I still think they're a very good team, especially with Chicharito in the fold.
Well coached as well.
Very well coached, but they have some frailties, especially at the back. I mean, they've brought in someone like Sega Koulibaly to try to close things out, but finding a partner alongside him proved to be a struggle for injuries.
It's Williams alongside Koulibaly today.
And we've seen Nick Dupuy, we've seen some other names slide in there. Consistency beside Koulibaly has certainly been an issue. So if there's one area the Galaxy can be exploited, it happens to be defensively. So it's going to be interesting. The Whitecaps, it's worth noting that the last few weeks they've been climbing up the XG standings, so they've started to play like a better team.
Actually, not bad. It's been relatively level pegging, I want to say, the last 5 or 6 matches.
And then they also beat the Galaxy on XG in both times they played, even though they only won one of those games. So this Whitecaps team is trending in the right direction and facing an undermanned Galaxy side that could pave the way for them to pick up some magic.
When I'm just looking at the Galaxy starting lineup here, as we can kind of dive into it, something that really grabs my interest is we're going to get Cabral up front, the young designated player, at the 9, with Alvarez, who obviously Whitecaps fans are going to remember from the screamer he scored to, stab a dagger in the heart of the Whitecaps. He came off the bench in that match. He's on the wing with Grandsir, the fellow Frenchman, to Cabral at the other wide position in a 4-3-3. So that's interesting. We haven't seen that look before, with all three of those guys starting at the same time. Then Leggett, Revelson, and Dos Santos in the midfield, which I think in terms of athleticism and sort of mobility is one of the better midfields the Galaxy could put out. Now, that being said, Victor Vasquez and Sasha Kleisted have still been the most effective shot and chance creators for the Galaxy this year. They're pushing 35, but it doesn't matter. They find a way to get it done. So it's definitely a bit of a different look, but I'm intrigued. Obviously, you've got Villafania and Araujo back there as your fullbacks. Araujo's been really good this year. He's a veteran 19-year-old fullback, which seems crazy in MLS, but it's like his 3rd or 4th season now. I'm really curious to see what they can do in wide areas, how Cabral up front as a striker, however he ends up playing, ends up working out against this Whitecaps team.
Yeah, I mean, just diving into the lineup, back 4, back 5, really no changes there. Villafania, Williams, Koulibaly, Araujo kind of has been their choice. I think they've preferred Williams over Steres. Obviously, Dupuy has also gotten some shifts in there. Jonathan Bond is the number 1, no questions asked. Obviously, Jurgen Klinsmann's son, Jonathan Klinsmann, remains as the backup. I always find that very interesting, the former USMNT manager. But it's really that midfield that's most interesting. Jonathan Dos Santos is finally healthy. He's back. He had a very good Gold Cup, as you'd probably know if you saw any of Mexico's games. Good to see him back up to fitness. Their captain, he starts. Ryan Revelis, and he's been phenomenal. I mean, he scored against the Whitecaps, or at least he set up an assist. He scored that bicycle kick last weekend. He's been
he scored the early one in the 2-1 loss, I think, correct? Against the Whitecaps.
I think he already has 3 or 4 goals playing as a number 6. So it really shows you the sort of offensive talent he has, and obviously he's a little more mobile than someone like a Sasha Kljestan. You wonder where someone like Victor Vasquez is, but he doesn't make the 18, so maybe it appears to be some sort of an injury, because obviously he's been phenomenal this year, for despite some concerns he might be a bit old, a bit slow for MLS after his first go around. He's proven those wrong quite quickly. Then up front, Efrain Alvarez also returns after playing for Mexico at the Gold Cup. Going to be good for the Galaxy. He had a good game the last time out for the Galaxy. I think he might have scored or gotten an assist, so clearly he hasn't missed a beat since coming back. And then Grancier and Cabral, the two wingers we highlighted at length last time these two teams met. Well, Cabral and Grancier with no number 9, no Chicharito. They just signed Stefan Joveljic, who isn't even on the bench yet. He's not quite ready to get up to speed. So missing their two main number 9s. They tried Sasha Kljestan as a false 9 last game. Obviously, didn't go to their liking, because they're trying Cabral there. But it's going to be interesting to see how this false 9 experimentation works, because that could play into the Whitecaps' hands, not having to deal with a threat like Chicharito, because Chicharito scored the last time he was healthy and played against the Whitecaps. And even his replacement, I forget quite who started in place. It was Ethan Zubak started in place of him last game, and he scored, but it was ruled offside, thankfully the Whitecaps. So maybe the lack of a number 9 will give a little less for the Whitecaps defenders to worry about, and they have to just try to shut down the speed that these wide players are going to offer.
Yeah, especially without Hernandez in the lineup, I think it's fair to say that maybe, you'd expect Grancier and Cabral to have come in and maybe had a little more in terms of their counting stats. You've got Grancier with 1 goal, 2 assists, Cabral with 1 goal, 1 assist so far this season, and that maybe, it's not an ideal best case scenario, but I think those guys are building slowly. Certainly Cabral looked a lot more lively in the last match than the first one against the Whitecaps. So, something to watch out for. And I think their midfield is interesting, because it might give a different feel today than ones we've seen before. When you have Vasquez and Kljestan in there, it tends to be a little bit more deliberate, a little more technical, less of a track meet. I wonder how the midfield will feel today. And you've got, for the Whitecaps, 3 pretty physically and athletically capable midfielders. I think all 3 of those guys could play the 6. All 3 of those guys could play on either side as an 8. All those guys are comfortable dribbling up the pitch, making long passes, making short passes. The midfield battle could be very interesting today, I think.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. We highlighted last time how the aging Galaxy, midfield, it could be exploited. The Whitecaps exploited it, and it's interesting now they counter back by going with a bit of a more mobile midfield with Jonathan Dos Santos, Revolison, and company there in the midfield. Sebastian Lletget, obviously back from the Gold Cup as well. That's going to be a big game changer for the Galaxy, that they have a little more of a physical midfield. It might not help them play the sort of possession-based football they've been trying to play, but on the other side, it's interesting. The Whitecaps, one nice thing about having Patrick Metcalf, at the 6 over a guy like Michael Baldissimo is, while you might lose a bit at the passing that Baldissimo provides, Patrick Metcalf, A, is a pretty good passer of the ball himself, but B, he is very defensively responsible, and that's one of his calling cards. And I think that's going to be, good to have at the number 6. And plus, you do have Janio Bikel, and it's going to be interesting to see if there's going to be some sort of, interaction between Bikel and Metcalf, because Bikel is comfortable at the 6, he can play the 8. Someone like Metcalf is comfortable at the 6, can play the 8. And they could also switch at the game during times and kind of cause confusion for the Galaxy, add a bit of flexibility and make, just give the Whitecaps a little of a different look on the ball and without possession, which is always a nice thing to have, instead of just, kind of being a little, not to say they are usually one dimensional, but you just having that added flexibility never hurts for a manager.
And looking at the Galaxy since losing to the Whitecaps, 1 draw, 1 loss, 2 victories. There's the last 2 matches, but also that loss was a 4-0 embarrassment, for lack of a better term, against FC Dallas, where Pepe took over the match. What do you make of this Galaxy team going into this one? I was surprised to still see them 3rd place in the West. It feels like after a hot start to the year, they cooled off, and yet they still find themselves up the table. What do you make of this team, not only for this match, but sort of long term the rest of the season? Is this a true top of the table contender alongside the likes of an SKC, alongside the likes of the Sounders, or is this a hot team that might slow down at some point?
I don't know. I think they're not going anywhere. The fact that, you look at their last few games, they've won their last two. You go back, I'd say, I guess 6-7 games. They've won 3-4 of them, picked up a draw. That's been without their number 9, Chicharito, who started so great for them. And the fact and plus they didn't have Jonathan Dos Santos for many of those games as he was at the Gold Cup, Sebastian Lletget. That's 3 of their best players they've been without for most of the month. So while I think the way their defense is and how things are, they're even more of a 3-2, 4-4-3 team than they are a 1-0, 2-1 team. So it's going to be fun to watch them. And there might be a few games where they get, pumped and they wonder, okay, maybe we should have tightened things up. But any lineup with Jonathan Dos Santos, Sebastian Lletget, Ryan Revolson, Samuel Grandsir, Kevin Cabral, Efrain Alvarez, Chicharito, just, Stefan Joveljic, the new one they've brought in. That's, in the front six, the options they have, plus Vazquez, Kleshtin. No, they're definitely a playoff team with that sort of offense, and they've shown that. And despite missing many of those guys for the last few weeks, they've shown that. So there's a lot to like with this Galaxy team. They're very well coached. They've got offensive depth. You do wonder if they maybe drop the ball instead of targeting another number 9 when they already have one of the best in the league, who, again, maybe Chicharito's injuries paved the way for this. You do wonder if they maybe could have been better off targeting another center back or something of that like. But to be fair, they did also recently pick up a guy like Revolson at center at CDM. And although they got pumped by FC Dallas 4-0 2 games ago, they did only allow 1 goal against Portland last Friday, and they kept a clean sheet this past Wednesday against Salt Lake. So maybe Refolison's addition is starting to stabilize the defense, which is dangerous to imagine because the one thing holding back this Galaxy side is defense. So no, we said this before. There's a lot to like about this Galaxy side. And I think they're an easy playoff shout who, depending on how they improve, could even be an outside MLS Cup contender.
It's amazing how a coaching change and one off season they've managed to churn such a large portion of their roster, but do so with a relative sense of like they just rolled into the next season. The guys got integrated quickly, and it seems to be going relatively well. And I think you outlined the roster well there. They feel one center back away from me to being an MLS Cup contender. They need someone to fill that other position that Derek Williams, Nick Dupuis, and Daniel Steres are currently occupying, especially because if you have an injury, if you have someone go down, you have someone unavailable, all of a sudden the depth gets really, really thin. And because Villafaña and Araujo like to get up the pitch and attack, it can leave the spaces open and behind. And that's where someone like Dahomey has roamed. That's somewhere where, Diber Caicedo is going to hope to roam today.
It's too bad that there is no Dahomey to exploit that, as you mentioned. But
it's tough. Such a tough break this week at training, not only for Dahomey to not be able to get back to full fitness, but for Goody to pick up a knock. It was, Alex, you and I were both there. It was a relatively innocent looking, training session where he just
almost like he left early. You didn't really.
He just kind of pulled off to the side. He was getting some work done on him, and you kind of thought, all right, well, it's precautionary.
End of the session, not much to worry about.
Yeah, and that's tough to see because I wonder about the Whitecaps' width in this match. Like, can Javane Brown on his own provide some additional attack for the Whitecaps? Because it's something they've done well this year is, stretch teams on the break, stretch teams in wide areas, and they don't have a ton of that this afternoon.
No, it's going to be interesting what I think Javane Brown should play left back. I think Jake Nowitzki likes to cut in a bit too much, and it's going to be quite narrow. And I think Javane Brown showed to be able to stretch out a game when he played left back against Houston. But I do wonder about that Brian White side. If he's playing a right wing and a guy like Nowinski is there, who's also he's more defensive. Do they lack a bit of a right wing presence? That's why I think Gaspar being left out, I think has to be with fitness. I just don't think he's ready to start because I would have liked to see some sort of stack on that right side, be it Brown and Gaspar or Nowinski and Brown, Heck or Gaspar and Nowinski, just to kind of offer more of that width, a defensive solidity, etc. But Nerwinski White stack kind of is, it's a bit of a strange one. It
We
doesn't
haven't
often.
seen White on the wing yet, so maybe there's something to unlock we don't know about.
But it's just like you look at White, he doesn't seem to strike strike me as someone who has a wing profile. He's not particularly.
I agree for sure. I'm just playing devil's advocate.
No, for sure. I mean, it's not like he's particularly speedy, or just he's shown a proficiency crossing the ball and stuff. Heck, it's too bad. Again, some of these guys are all in fit. Ryan Gauld has played on the wing before, and he could have been a very good shout to stick on the wing. But I suppose Ryan Raposo could have always played, and it feels like he's been shunned from a starting job all because of some bad luck in a 20-minute span against the best team in the Western Conference right now. Feels a bit harsh that he hasn't started since, but I guess we'll see with Brian White. Maybe we'll be proven wrong. Maybe the last 2 days of training this week where White has started to play on the wing, he's put up some master classes of performance. But it's going to be interesting to see that dynamic of trying to see if White can offer that width, can offer some of that wing play.
Well, you spoke about two guys I wanted to ask about, and that's Bruno Gaspar and former Sporting men, both of them, Bruno Gaspar and Ryan Gauld. How many minutes, what do we want to set the over-unders for minutes played tonight on both of those guys? I have to think this is an opportunity for Bruno to come in, whether it's at fullback, whether it's on the wing, because we did see a little bit of that at training, and that would be exciting. What do you think? Over under 25 minutes for Gaspar?
Well, let's go roll down the list. Let's go Gaspar. Let's add Youngworth in there as well, since it's his.
True.
He's on the bench. If Florian Youngworth obviously traded
and can play midfield, can also play center back. It's
fullback.
It's a diverse, and a player there that could slot in a lot of spots.
Yeah, so I think if we're gonna go start with Gaspar, I think he can get a 20 minutes, 30 minutes. He's been training for a while now. He seems to be slowly getting his way up. He was training with the starters for a lot of the week, so clearly he was in contention to start. I'd say Gaspar, I'd set the over-under at 20 minutes just because it's Mark DeSantos. Sometimes he does almost forget to look at his watch and leave subs a little late at times. I'll leave Gaspar at 20. For those watching Ryan Gauld, or for here who obviously wanted more about Ryan Gauld, phenomenal player. At training, you could see the quality, you could see the skills, but I must warn, fitness is an issue for him right now, and that's not a slight on him. He just hasn't played in 2 months. He hasn't trained, and obviously he's been training on his own, but he's not match fit. So I'd say with Gauld, for me personally, I expect 5 minutes for him today, and then he's working his way up to 10, 20, 30, and then a start. So for Gauld, I'll set it at 5 because he's really fitness. He's working his way up, but the quality's there. And then for Youngworth, I'll say, MLS veteran, Mark DeSantos always likes those guys. You never know. Maybe Mark DeSantos needs some solidity in the midfield at the end of the game or at the back. I'll set it at 10 or 15 minutes. I'll say 10 minutes for the over-under. So I don't know if in the prediction section we want to actually say what our over-unders are, but that's what I'd set them at. I'd say 20, 10, and 5 for those three players.
Yeah, that's fair. I have to think that everything is lining up for Ryan to make his first MLS start in that home match on the 21st. That, if they could have everything go their way as a club, you have to think that that's what the stars are aligning towards. But as you mentioned, it's a process, especially when you haven't, even necessarily been kind of in a preseason or season training mode to go training fitness, and getting integrated at that level to then full match fitness to go 90 minutes. It's a long way to catch up. And I'm sure someone like Ryan, can catch up quickly, but as you mentioned, it's not all going to happen right away. And it was noticeable a little bit at training, even if the final product, the balls into the box, the finishing was also incredibly notable, because I think it's a step up from anything the Whitecaps have on their squad at the moment. I like Bo's comment about, Cava, speaking of guys at training, looked phenomenal this week, looked inspired after the Gold Cup and, playing with his fellow countrymen. I don't know, maybe, Mark DeSantos doesn't really like subbing Cava off. He likes to run Cava a full 90. So maybe that had something to do with it. Maybe he's not too worried about options off the bench, but I agree. This is where winger depth though comes into the fold. If you don't feel like you have anyone at the moment who can slot in there, I guess Brian White's next man up. And Interestingly enough, this might have been a really good opportunity for Theo Bair to get a start in the wing, but alas, he is out on loan. I mean, congratulations to Theo. Gets to go to Norway, gets to compete for promotion. I think that's going to be tremendous for his development. But this seems like a great opportunity for someone like Theo to get in there and start. And, he's on a plane, or he's in Norway, or he's close to being in Norway. So it's not going to happen.
Yeah. And apologies for my wayward reactions there. They've just on the TSN pre-show, Julian de Guzman's building his best Canadian 11 right now, and he's got Junior Hoylett starting at the number 10 over Mark Anthony K. My brain just slightly melted, so apologies for that. But yeah, I mean, rolling through a lot. Also from Twitter right now, shout out to Harjit Johal, local hard journalist, put out an interesting tweet 5 minutes ago that the Whitecaps had actually were looking to sign a player, unnamed player. I'd have to assume a left back or a center back based on current needs, and that that player is not vaccinated, isn't planning on getting vaccinated, and the Whitecaps completely cut interest on the player. Thought that was quite the interesting story. Really shows some of what's going on behind the scenes. Some players, always lots of movement. Some wonder why didn't the Whitecaps sign a left back? Why didn't they sign this? Well, maybe the player they wanted had a certain set of beliefs that didn't necessarily align with what the Caps want to be about, and good on them for that. Just thought that was quite the interesting story. I don't know if you saw that, Sam.
I did just see that very recently, and I mean, hey, it even caught me off guard. Then we're talking with Youngworth and in his introductory press conference, and he said, "Oh yeah, him and the girlfriend or the wife, I can't remember which one, just got vaccinated, to be able to come to Canada." And it was kind of like, oh, okay, sure.
What was
like
the hold up?
I'm not gonna judge people for their personal choices and whatnot, but it is the reality. You're playing in a league. If there are certain requirements, it affects your ability to do your job, right? Regardless of what you think of it on a personal level. And it's something that I guess we don't probably really consider that much, but something that can come up. And yeah, shout out to Bo there. I don't know if it was Breck Shea they're looking at, but interesting.
Yeah, no, maybe. And I mean,
don't want to, enact any contract clauses that they weren't aware of or anything like that.
Yeah, we'll try to avoid that. But maybe moving on, I guess we're kind of at predictions time. And by the way, Sam, I think I'm going to have to write down this de Guzman lineup. We're going to have to talk about it on the next podcast when we talk about Canada soccer, but because this is melting my brain. I'm just looking
also classic, as Bo also points out in the comments, classic Whitecaps pregame show to spend very little time actually talking about the Whitecaps or breaking down anything of that topic. It's inevitably TFC or Canadian national team related.
And I don't think Mark Anthony K is on the bench, which is just criminal. Liam Fraser is on the bench over Mark Anthony K in this 11. Best possible starting 11, mate. Jeez, Mark Anthony K not being in there. Anyways, predictions.
Right. I'll go first because I've already made
let's update. It's been a while, right, since the last Whitecaps, but how did we do first before we dive into some of the predictions? Because the last game out would have been Minnesota United, another draw. I think it was, what happened is I had a win, you had a loss, so I think we both got
I think we missed on all sides there. I'll take a look at the standings maybe when I'll pull it up when you're doing your prediction, but I'll go first. I've kind of hinted at throughout the show. I think despite the difference in the standings, these two teams just match up for competitive matches. Both of them have sort of been coin tosses and one's gone each way. I think it's time for a draw. So for the first time in a long time, I'm picking a draw. I'm picking a 1-1. So just kind of right down the middle. We're going to see what happens. It'll probably be a high scoring affair where one team, runs away with it, but I'm going 1-1 draw in this one to kind of continue the theme we've seen so far, as Alex, I think, is taking a photo of the lineup here, which is going to be great fodder for our Canada show.
Hopefully I can see the picture of this show. Oh my days. Yeah. I might have to get a better picture of that after, or maybe they'll post it on Twitter for my sake. It gets worse the more I see of it. Anyways, my prediction, I'm going to go away from home. So you picked a draw, a rare
1-1 draw, indeed.
I'm gonna go. I think they're feeling good. All the training, the Ryan Gauld, signing and whatnot. I'll go a 2-1 road win. I'll go against the grain.
Okay.
I don't know where they're gonna get 2 goals from, but They pull it out of some crack, some noonie or crack, whatever the expression goes. So we'll go 2-1 Whitecaps win. But
so you're picking a repeat of the last time out between these two teams. Interesting.
Both games have been 2-1, so it's certainly not actually that bold. So I'll go for that. And then before we go, one last thing. Over-unders on the minutes we mentioned earlier in the show. I feel like we have to at least do that.
Right. Okay. First of all, just to update viewers out there, Alex is currently on. So we give away 1 point for correctly getting the result. So like win, loss, draw. And then you get a full 3 points out of the match if you get the scoreline and the result. So far this year, through our predictions, Alex is on 9 points and I am on 6. And Alex has been on a bit of a run lately. I stormed out at the start of the year, had 6 pretty early on, but Alex has come back and now holds a pretty confident lead. In terms of those minutes, I'm going to go over with Gaspar because I feel like he has a role to play in this match. Galdo, I'm going to go under because I think they're just super cautious, or that he might just stay on the bench and even not play in this one. And then who was the third player you'd mentioned? I think I missed that.
Jungwirth.
Oh, and what did you set the over-under at for him?
10.
Yeah, I'll go over for that as well.
So over, and then was it over on Gold?
No, under on Gold.
Oh,
I'm
interesting.
Going under on Gold, but over on Jungwirth and over on Gaspar. I think Gaspar's the key man off the bench and maybe comes on 65th minute. That's the hope, at least.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll go under Gaspar, under Jungwirth, over Gold.
Interesting. Okay.
So I'm going complete opposite on you on that one. I realize.
Well, that's an extra level of intrigue, something to watch out for as this match goes on. Hopefully it's a competitive one. Hopefully it's an entertaining one, like really these last 2 matches between these teams have been. And it's the decider, the rubber match in the season series, which is kind of fun, especially because we're getting this all Western Conference set up this year. These matches are going to be more meaningful, not only for the standings, but also these kind of season series that we can track as well.
Yeah. Well, I think on that note, it's Whitecaps game time. We'll let you get settled for this one. This was another express edition of the Third Sub Live show. Sorry if it was a bit scrambled, but
producer Ben will be back to save us from ourselves soon enough.
After his monumental Olympics coverage, where he put the country on his shoulder for a few months, or a few weeks, I guess, felt like a few months, but he'll be back. We're settling into the routine here. We'll be back at Whitecaps training as well, and more podcasts. So stay tuned for that. That was another edition of the Third Sub Live show presented by Macy's Sports, and we'll catch you again soon.
What's up, bro?
Aye.
There's not a rule that you have to use the 3 subs.
He's the best left back in Canada.
2 days gonna be the day that they're gonna throw it back to you. By now you should have somehow realized what you gotta do. I don't believe that anybody feels the way I do about you now. Backbeat, the word is on the street that the fire in your heart is out. I'm sure you've heard it all before, but you never really had a doubt. I don't believe that anybody feels the way I do about you now. And all the roads we have to walk are winding, and all the lights that lead us there are blinding. There are many things that I would like to say to you, but I don't know how.